You did everything right. You got your project management system, you set it up, your team is documenting their SOPs, they have processes and templates to use. You meet with everybody pretty regularly if there's something that's needed to make sure that you're on the same page and they know what to do. But last week, there was still a very important task, actually, that went unnoticed by everybody except for you. If you've ever had a nagging feeling in the back of your mind that your business should be running a little bit smoother and a little bit faster than it is, and you just don't know why, this video is for you. I'm going to show you something that I use that I call a workflow mind map. It's really simple. I use a tool called Mural, mural.com, which is one of my favorite whiteboarding tools to use. And it allows you to create a visual mind map of the workflow that is happening. I know that might be a lot of big words, but basically, I'm going to show you what mine looks like after multiple years of refining and doing it. And then we're going to talk through the process of how you can create something on a much simpler scale if you need to, or as complex as you want it to be. So this is mine here. I'm going to pull it up right on the screen. You can see, again, lots of boxes. This is actually a pretty basic one for me. So if you are in a bigger company and you've done operations for a longer period of time, this is a simplified version. If you're just getting started out and or starting to use a tool like this with your team or just even with yourself for your own brain sometimes, don't be overwhelmed by the amount of boxes there. The point is not what the boxes are, but the point is to illustrate to you that there is a workflow mind map that I create and I have found is really, really, really effective in keeping everybody on the same page, and especially to be used in things like meetings. If you have kickoff meetings, if you are going through a new process, if you're just if you feel like a conversation in a team meeting has gotten stuck and it seems like you're saying the same thing, but not really. More words are usually never the answer. I have been a part of companies and teams where their meeting cadence was really good. I've been a part of companies and teams where their meeting cadence was not very good, if not almost non-existent, right? And then I have been a part of many, many, many meetings across both of those types of companies that are very long. And it seems like people are saying things, but it's not always the most effective way to get your point across and or to make sure that people are actually understanding what you're saying versus how they're interpreting it, and so on and so forth. It can get a little bit messy because as humans and as different roles within the company, we see things through different lens and perspectives, and that's normal and that's accurate and that's totally how it's supposed to be. A tool like this helps you just map, literally. It's literally just a map to be able to pull up and to show, okay, I'm here and I'm talking about getting here, and these are the things that are going back and forth that we're thinking through. So in my case, this particular one that I built is how I really look at operational systems within a company. I call it the Bottleneck Elimination System. And so what we have inside of here is a very, very, very light structure that shows each box represents a type of asset or system or process and how they relate to each other in a workflow. Now, again, if you are not a person who loves mind maps, and like I'm that nerd who does, but if you're not that person, it's really easy to look at this and go, that's a lot of words, a lot of colors, a lot of lines. My brain is cramping. That's totally fine. This works for me because it's a very, very simple version of how I can think through each of the things that I'm looking at and assessing whenever I'm doing my operations consulting work. And so the main point is that you're able to look at the core pieces, right? Each box represents a core piece of what is happening in the workflow process, especially when it needs to be moved from one person to the other, one department to the other. Even if you're working on it solo, one type of brain processing to the other part of your brain processing. So I'm going to start with a really basic one here for today's video of just a series of cubes that we have here. And let's take the example of a client has a question that they are asking you. And maybe your job is to create, YouTube videos like this one for your clients. All right. So your job is to take and to help them to edit their YouTube videos or to write a script for their YouTube videos or things like that. And you have a couple team members who also support you in doing this. Or say, for example, that you're an accountant. And your job is to take your client requests and to do their bookkeeping monthly on a monthly basis, to prepare their things for taxes at the end of the year. Like, you've got a basic thing. Or let's pretend that you have a professional services business, like you are a lawyer, or you help in construction, or you have an agency where you create copywriting. You write copy for people. All of those types of businesses start with the same trigger, which is your client has a request. Okay, so I'm just going to type that in. So client request received. There's a lot of questions that will come up for me just from a process perspective, just even looking at one of these maps. Things like, well, where is the client request coming from? What platform? How often? Who checks it? But that's because that's my brain. My brain is naturally curious about understanding what the story is behind each of the moving pieces. But we're trying to get out of that micro. We're trying to stay in the macro of things and look at just the overarching workflow. So client request is received. And it then moves into daily communications platform. So if I can spell, I have this thing where I can never spell when other people are watching me. All right. Daily communications platform. So this could be something like Slack. It could be something like Teams. It could be emails that's happening, WhatsApp, depending on how you and your team communicate on a regular basis. Pro tip here, and a little bit of a side tangent. My biggest pet peeve is when there are multiple platforms for the same type of communication. So if you are doing communications with your team, please pick one platform, stick to it, just make it one source where somebody can go, because the more open places that you have, if you're texting them and also Slacking them and also emailing them and also in the project management system, it's really easy to lose and to forget things. And I know it's hard because in the moment, especially as CEOs and founders who are really busy, the form of like whatever's the most convenient so that you don't lose it, I totally get that. But having one standardized place, I'll make sure that you have less drop balls and less things that go wrong. So making some assumptions here in this workflow, but a client request is received, it moves into the daily communications platform. And from there, ideally, it moves into the project management system. And literally, this is how you're going to do it in real time. You're just going to grab a Mural board, put on a bunch of squares, and just try to think through what are all the steps and processes. And then for the project management system, it might make it into the meeting agenda ? And it might not for the next meeting. Sometimes it just moves straight into being done. So the work just starts to be done. Work is assigned to Anne, completed by contractor / employee. Okay, so your team is essentially working on something here. So the reason why I like these is if you look at this, every single little square is an example of where there is missing information. So remember, the question that we're trying to answer is, why does everything in the company take longer than I feel that it should? Right? How come, even though I've explained it multiple times, why don't people understand? They say that they get it. They say that they're going to do it. Then it doesn't get done. How did I notice it wasn't done? And I know we're all busy, right? There's a lot of this. And I'm not calling out any particular thing. This is like in working with 5, 6, 7, 8, and even 9-figure companies. I've heard these same questions on calls over and over and over and over again. So it happens to all of us, really. So each of these boxes is a place where there is either missing context, like it's not documented, it's not like standardized, there's no structure around it, everything is named differently, it happens on different frequencies of time and dates and days of the week and how often, or it doesn't. And also, not only is there missing context, but each of these squares represents somewhere where there's potentially other squares. So for example, what does that mean? Work is assigned to and completed by contractor or employee. Depending on what type of business you have, you would have many different variations of this. Like look at mine. Say, for example, once work is assigned from the project management system, there are a couple different paths that it can take. There's a path for creating marketing assets. There's a path for creating client deliverables. There's a path for, in the project management system, Tasks that are what I call a team task stack, just regular recurring tasks that happen. There's a lot, right? There's a lot that can happen once it goes into the project management system and work is assigned to be completed by someone. So not only is there missing context of defining what each box is, sometimes there's missing boxes. And that's because there's so much that is happening inside of our brains. And not only that, I want to name that there's so much that's happening in the company at any given time, right? Especially if you're like, Sarah, I have a project management system. I have a project manager, maybe even, or an operations manager, or an admin, or an executive assistant. I have processes. We've written it down. And even if we haven't written it down, somebody else should have done it because we've done this a million times. Why is there not a process? Again, I'm not calling out any particular person. I have heard this across so many companies, guys. So I know that if it's happening everywhere else, most likely if you stayed to this point in the video, it's also happening for you. So I'm going to show you kind of a little bit of the process of how you go about starting to solve that. So again, context is missing, boxes are missing. And the next thing after that is once all the boxes are there, even with all the context, say for example, let's look at my complicated one in this case. All the boxes are there. They all track back to an actual asset or a process or a system. The workflow is mapped out. I've thought through all of these pieces. Every single box still represents a failure point, someplace where something can go wrong because every situation, every single client, every single account, every single job, every single project, every single marketing campaign is slightly different. No matter how standardized you get, there's always some sort of nuance, there's always some sort of detail, there's always some sort of context that makes it be a little bit different each time. And the thing that is making it feel like your business is taking a really long time to get basic things done or to get certain things done or to get very important high touch client things done. The reason why it feels like it's taking a long time and or it's not getting quite right is because there are unique failure points that are built into every single square. And that's just a part of it. That's just a part of how it's done. So a lot of times people ask me why I have all of the, even with the workflow mind map, we've set this up and I have all of my context and I've built all of the things and all the squares are there and it's all available. Why are we still getting this not right? Okay. Why is this still taking long, even if we do get it right? And that's because these little lines here, these arrows that connect, do not only go one way. I call it the handoff bottleneck, where things get stuck, right? They get stuck because there are decisions that have to be made between one person or the next, or even if it's just you in some of these boxes and these lines are still all on you, from one part of your brain to the next, from one energy level or space that you need to be into the next. So things get stuck there and they accumulate over time because you just need a little bit more space. You need a little bit more thought process. You need to understand it more. You just haven't had time. There's all these things and it starts to, you've got a lot of other things going on, all valid reasons. But they start to build up as blockers within these arrows. And then you incorporate more humans. So let's pretend these first set of lines that we made are all the CEO. Okay, so this is CEO's workflow. But think about now, let's introduce a project manager. Okay, so the project manager is looking at, let's make the project manager color blue. The project manager is looking at the project management system, or they're putting things into the project management system after they have a meeting. And the other way around too. They are looking at the project management system itself to build the meeting agendas. And then after that's all set up and the meeting agenda is done, they're still thinking about what they have to talk about with people after the meeting is done. And then also based on what they reply, if the meeting agenda can get updated or not. So now all of a sudden, instead of having a very straightforward process, workflow, SOP, checklist, all of these things, there are things that are happening and this is just one person on the team. Let's pretend that one of the other people on the team is let's say this is a graphic design company. And after the meeting is done, the graphic designer, who we will make a purple color, has to take the notes from the meeting agenda and start to complete the work here that they've been assigned to do. But what happens if they start the work and they're confused about context and they're unsure if they got it right? They're going to go to the project management system, What happens if the project management system doesn't have the context that they need? It gets stopped. They might move over into asking the CEO or somebody else who's giving the direction in the daily communications platform. But what happens if that person is out of office, or they're busy, or it's the project manager who is in their blue lines here and they're not able to answer? Then all of a sudden the work now gets trapped inside of the box. And that's what I meant earlier when I said each box is a significant landing place for failure points. Even if in your mind, as the person who originates this, the original person going through the boxes and connecting the dots for people, even if for you it feels very straightforward and clear, that again, there's nuance, and every human's experience is different when they're in the work and when they're relating and when they're hearing things. So if you're like, great, Sarah, that sounds really complicated and I get it, and you literally just said what my problem is, but in a different way, so what? So the point is that the more that you can identify the boxes that are meant to be in your workflow mind map, very specific boxes without getting too granular, right? You have to balance it, because sometimes you want to get like super like 100 million boxes, and that's not helpful because nobody understands it anyway. And when you're looking at it, it's confusing. So you have to get really good at establishing what are the core areas where there are at least 2 to 5 people who touch it pretty consistently. That should be a box. It should be a box in your workflow mind map. It should be set up here so that you can note and say, hey, we all agree that this is a common place where we find ourselves interacting. More than 2 people even are interacting on this. And we're going to note that it's there. So 1, put all your boxes out. 2, it'll help you really to analyze and to decide what it is that is happening in each of these boxes and whether it needs to be adjusted or not. Do you have to talk about like how client requests are received? Is that actually the part that is the craziest part, even though it feels like the meetings are overwhelming? Is it actually how we're getting things from the clients that is making this meeting agenda super complicated? It's all of those pieces there. It helps you to identify what do we need to work on and when and how, and which one of these is going to be the one that makes the biggest difference for the team right now, or for your brain right now, to be able to process a little better, to be able to be a little bit smoother, to be able to work a little bit more efficiently with a little bit less friction and or that handoff bottleneck that exists. So when I'm working in companies, these are the things that I'm assessing. Is like, what are all the boxes? How would anybody know looking at this what this means? Like, can we link it out? Where does it source to? Do you like how it's formatted? Is it useful? Is it effective? These are all questions that I'm constantly asking. And then I'm thinking about the user experience. I'm thinking about how people are moving from one box to the next and how the workflow goes, ideally, and that how it's set up. Because each of these areas is a place for a bottleneck to occur in the handoff or the decision-making that happens by the CEO and the team. Finally, the number one reason why it's worth it to do all of this work is because now when I'm in meetings with clients, or we're looking at their quarterly goals or their KPIs or their performance improvement metrics for specific departments or team roles, or that there's something set aside once a month to really just kind of go through processes and see where things are stuck, this allows us to never forget where we left off last. This allows us to see a working model in real time of what exists or not. And it can be really simple like this. It can be a little bit more complicated like this, or it can be extremely complicated and detailed where every department has their own type of map, and that all rolls up into the bigger map for the company. But it's a really good flexible place to start, because the core takeaway that I want to leave with you is this. When you are using just words and not a map like this, and you are using just words to communicate with other people, their brains are creating some sort of visual, whether it's conscious or subconscious, some sort of visual interpretation of what they feel like they're hearing you say and what it feels like for them and how they're processing the information and so on and so forth. A map like this allows it to make one central place where, instead of trying to talk with each other, over each other, or around each other, you're saying the same thing, but you're not sure that you're saying the same thing. It's very easy to pull up the screen and go, this is where I'm at. I'm actually talking specifically about needing more boxes here, or the connectivity. I think that it shouldn't even be like this. It should be sourced from somewhere else. Or I'm talking about this thing here. Or there's a thing before this around like how we receive client requests. And I think there are 5 different ways that that's currently happening. And I'm asking about communications that came in from this particular space. It allows people to to get set pretty quickly, and to be able to be on the same page and to process the same thing because you're using the visual and you're not just spewing a bunch of words and expecting people to interpret it properly. That is a skill. It's necessary in leadership, so on and so forth, but that's not the purpose of this video. This video is to showcase to you how you can use visuals to shortcut some of those things and to also save your place of where you left off last so that when you come back to it, all of it is here. I hope it's so the next time that you feel like you're saying a lot of words and you're not sure if you're getting to where you want to go, consider using something like that map. It'll make it much more easier for you.